All right, back to me here. All right, welcome to USA Tennis Coach. If we can stop Styrling from making noise over there and switching the duplex back to him. Anyway, hi, I'm Bill, Executive Director of USA Tennis Coach, and today we're going to talk about the 4 C's of practice applied. So Styrling's going to introduce exactly what are the 4 C's, and then we're going to go through some different bullet points in terms of games and challenges, live, one ball live, and serve and return challenges. So we're going to go for a little more depth than what we're doing. And yes, we're hammering the serve and the return because they're the number 1 and 2 most important shots in the game. All right, so Styrling, tell us about the 4 C's.
Okay, so the 4 C's, the first one is consistency, which is an adjective, but I explain it as making shots, more shots in a row. So consistency is number 1. Number 2 is control. Number 3 is concentration. And number 4 is conditioning. And so when we're bringing together a team of players to practice for competition, there are 4 areas every player can improve to move forward in their development. And so the first C, consistency, is where you're trying to relay to a player that, look, to be consistent, I mean to make more shots, because you can consistently miss. So I think, you know, it's for me, I'm such a word crazy person. I love to use words that actually mean, I want to mean what I say, and I want to say what I mean. So I define it as consistently make shots. So, you know, I always like to clarify that.
Yeah. If I can interject for a second, because we had this debate. We've had this debate a lot, and with different people, and how people misconstrue the word consistency to mean never miss, and they use it as a way to beat themselves up. And I don't know. I don't know about you. I have never heard anyone ever come off the court saying, I was happy with my consistency today.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things where as coaches, we've used that word for so long. I mean, 30, 40, 50 years, we've used that word, be consistent, be consistent. And you're right. I never had a player come off the court and said, wow, coach, my consistency was off the chain today. I've just never heard that. So I've more or less, I use the word, but I think, and it's good, you can use the word, just make sure that the player understands you're trying to get them to make multiple shots in a row. And for me, it's 2 in a row, because that lines up with the data, and that's what I'm all about. Control. Every player, we need to have control. I tell my players, how do you control the ball? You control your racket. You've got to control the swing path and the point of contact. So that's the way you control the ball. If you want to move the ball to certain areas of the court, and I talk about the spot on the ball in my book, you've got to be able to hit the ball through the bottom back if you want topspin, outside, inside, whether you want to move it right or left. The third C is concentration. So the 3 challenges I put in the blog this week really help a player move into the area where they're fully engaged in the practice. They're concentrating on the task at hand. So one ball live is where 2 balls are going at the same time, either straight ahead or cross court. So there's 4 players on a court. And then when one ball misses, so let's say I'm playing catch with you straight ahead, that's the catch point. If either of us miss the shot, we call live ball. And that lets the other pair of players know that that ball is now become the keep away ball that all 4 of us can play. So it's shifting the focus of playing catch into playing keep away. So there's a concentration level where you have to be fully engaged in what you're trying to accomplish, and then move immediately to the next step. The 4th C, is conditioning. So conditioning is one of those things where in tennis is not really an aerobic sport. It's not like running a 5K. It's more of a sprint. Sprint, play 2 to 10 seconds for every point, and then rest. Get your heartbeat down. So these challenges are designed, especially the serve and return challenges, the 4C challenges, to help a player be able to reset physically from 4-ball sequence to a 4-ball sequence to a 4-ball, because those challenges are done in 16-ball sequences.
Yeah. If we could go a little bit into the aerobic versus anaerobic, and then there are other different, more specific types of anaerobic. Let's not get too scientific, but yeah, I mean, people need an aerobic base. You need to have an aerobic base. You have, because that's how you're going to be able to recover in points better. But in the article that I wrote, The 7 Deadly Sins of High School Tennis, coaches overly aerobically train their teams. And so yeah, the conditioning really needs to be targeted. So can you run through the 4 C's again really quick? Because I'm not sure if it came across, kind of a little slower. Just go each C,
okay.
Flex out conditioning a little bit more.
Number 1 is consistency. And the reason why that's number 1 is that's the first way to force an error on your opponent, okay? Either forced or unforced. Number 2 is control. Number 3 is concentration. And number 4 is conditioning. Now, they all 4 hit those physical, mental, and emotional needs that every player needs to go through. So having a practice where and we started out like this in our practices, where I want the player to fully engage mentally, fully engage emotionally, fully engage physically. And so that's why we sort of use this 4C, umbrella of a challenge. And you can literally put those 4 items into really any challenge or drill you're doing. These specifically are geared, especially the ones in this blog this week are geared to serve and return, and the 3 shots that follow each of those. Okay, so I can go through briefly, just real briefly. You'll be able to read them on the blog, and I'm working on video as well, so there'll be some video. We can go through the serve 4C challenge. So that's basically, I'm working with either 1 or 4 players max on 1 court. Okay, it's one of those things where you can have other players practicing and doing other things, and you can pull players to your coach's court and work through. So let's say I'm working with just 1 player. Well, let's do that. That's easy. Let's work with 2 players. So I have the first player step up. They're going to serve, and I have 3 balls in my hand as the coach. They're going to serve. I'm going to feed the S1. They hit that, S2, S3. Now, the first 4 balls they play, if they're serving, I'm going to require them to hit cross court. Okay? So the serve has got to go an outside serve or a wide serve. And then I feed them the second ball. They go cross court with that ball. Third ball, cross court. Fourth ball, cross court. If they score in the areas, I give them 1 point for each shot. So they can score a max of 4. Then they rotate out, and the next player comes in and does the same thing. I'll play all 16 balls from the deuce court, all 16 balls from the ad court. Now, the second set of 4 balls, they will hit everything down the line. So when they're serving, I require them to hit a T serve. Okay? So they hit a T serve, next ball down the line, next ball down the line, next ball down the line. The third and fourth sequences, the third sequence is they have to place everything to the deuce court only, and then the next time they have to place all the shots to the ad court only. And they can choose wherever they want to hit the serve. So I'm not real picky about that. This is just one way I've designed the challenge. As coaches, I like to, as a coach trying to help other coaches with their practices, I like to make the challenge broad enough where you can put your own little spin on it and creativity. So you can.
Okay. Yeah. I think the thing I love about that is that I know from my experience of 27 seasons of coaching that players feel ill prepared to execute simple strategies much of the time. I mean, we talk a lot about the 99% of kids who play high school tennis, and how they aren't necessarily taking private lessons every week. They haven't played a lot of USTA tournaments. The 1% has. Maybe it's more, maybe it's 2%. But those kids, when you do this, when you give them the opportunity to, hit a serve to a certain spot and then execute cross court and then do that and then execute 4 straight shots down the line and then, and then have these kind of set things, then their comfort level, their belief that they're going to be able to execute that in competition goes up.
Absolutely, Bill. I mean, you want to have a player start out where they're successful. Okay, so I'll make it just simply cross court. Then, as I see the players achieving, because they get 1 point for every successful balls they make. If they're achieving 14, 15 out of 16, I'm going to make target areas. I'm going to divide the halves of the deuce and the halves of the ad and make them hit wider cross court, or a smaller margin down the line. So I'm going to tailor the challenge to the player. I can do this challenge with, an intermediate player and an advanced player at the same time, because I can have the lines and say, well, intermediate, you get the whole court. Advanced, you get the half. So I can, and it's great because they're challenging themselves. They're scoring against themselves. Another way you could do it is they could compete. You could have 2, players on your court that are working through this challenge with you, and they're competing for the highest score, which they love. I mean, I've had some really high-level players do these types of challenges, and I can see them talking to each other and jabbing each other, especially the boys. They're, oh, man, I got all 4 of them that time. So it's great for the energy of what you're trying to accomplish. The return 4C challenge is where the coach, I'm serving, and then I have 3 balls left. And then I'm serving. They're returning cross court, all 4 balls. The next 4, they're down the line, deuce court only, ad court only. And it's the same type of thing. So what I've found is when I put the 4C challenge in the context of serving 1, 2, 3, returning 1, 2, 3, it gives them the practice on those movement sequences back and forth, because I can stand at the tee as a coach and have a basket there, and I do this for players. I'm helping them work on technique and things like that. I'll just feed rally balls, and have them hit the targets right without the serve and return, which is great. I mean, I do that a lot with Pierce. We do that as a warm up because, again, I'm feeding balls, but they have a mission. They have to hit cross court on all 4 of these. They have to hit down the line on. And then I can mix and match. I could go cross court, down the line, cross court. So, but I've started to almost steer away from cross court down the line a little bit, and I steer more toward, are you hitting a forehand or a backhand? Mm-hmm. And then what makes sense here? Does your forehand down the line make sense? Are you inside the court or are you behind the baseline? So that's how I've started to get players to think about cross-court and down the line. Is your backhand down the line really a great shot here as far as where you are in the court? So that's the idea.
All right. So we've already talked about 1 ball live, and we actually play that a little bit differently. We call it dingles. So we call it dingles. So it's both players on both sides competing, but then the last ball, that's live actually counts,
Right.
So
right.
I mean, it sounds like in your variation, they're rallying.
Yeah, they earn a next
my
point.
kids were actually really trying to get an edge in the point,
Gotcha.
Yeah. It's a little different way of doing it. So we've already done that. Now let's go on and to the next one, which is now you said games and challenges in general.
Yeah, I think that any game or challenge that you have for a player on the practice court should basically pass 3 tests. Number 1, does this happen on the match court? Okay, does this even happen when you play a match? Number 2, does it have to do with winning points or scoring points? if you're doing something and you don't equate something to it, like scoring a point or hitting a cone, you're devaluing the shot, in my opinion. The player is, I've done this both ways, so I know what it has an effect on the player. Anytime I start to, even if we're just working on technique, forehands cross court, I say, look, if you miss the shot, it's in the net, it's -1. If you make the shot, it's +1. And your objective is to get 10 points right now. Their focus level, and I've asked them this, what happened to your focus level? They say, Coach, it went up. And because I did it without scoring points. And they're like, yeah, I can tell the difference. I'm really focused more. So I think the third thing, so it has to do with winning points. The third thing is what you're doing in this challenger drill. Is it match court mindset first and then practice court mindset? Okay. So is the mindset of the player and is the mindset of you as a coach when you're delivering it, are you pushing the player toward playing the sport? It's like my good friend, I think his name is John Kessler. I just blanked.
My good friend who's
my good friend, yeah, I completely
that was a good look.
Watched his name. John Kessler. He's with USA Volleyball. He said, my Chinese friends always tell me, John, we don't drill a sport, we play a sport. And so there is, like anything else, repetition has to occur over time for anyone to perfect a skill, and especially an open sport skill like tennis. How at the same time you can make it creative, fun, and make it related to how you're going to play.
Yeah. Let me throw something in there too. I like my games to be harder than real tennis. So we'll play a game called Cupcake, where 3 players come across and hit forehands against 3 players at the net. So the spaces between players are much smaller. And over time, they learn to find those tiny little spaces, right? And then when they play doubles, then it looks like a hole you can drive a truck through, So, once this is one of those fun things of, overtraining. So, I think the kids have to be a certain level before they can start doing games and challenges that are much harder than real life.
Or you can take challenges and you can take them down a notch. Like we play a game called Intensity, where it's 2 people that are back and they're the defensive players. They're on the baseline. They can come up if they want to once the point is in play. But they learn real quick. So you have a line off to the side of the net. One player comes in, they do a poach volley, feed a ball, they do a poach volley. They have to play it out against the 2 players back. And if they win that point, I give them an overhead, so they have to smash it. For players that aren't out, that just really can't hit an overhead out of the air, I actually have 2 progressions before that. I hit the overhead. They have to let the ball bounce, and they actually have to turn and set and catch the ball. And then they are allowed to spike it and then play out the point. The second progression is they let the ball bounce. They go and they actually fake themselves out. They act like they're going to catch it, but then they spike it off the bounce. And then they spike it out of the air. So that's a simple progression to learn smashes that you can do just drop, like feeding the ball. But I actually implemented it into a game. And they're actually I'm basically accomplishing 2 things at once. I'm having them work on their technique as a smash in the context of playing out at the net, and they're playing against 2 people. So it just makes the learning process for these beginner, intermediate, or intermediate players much more enjoyable because, I talked about this in my book. I don't want my players to work harder. I want them to play harder. Okay? So I don't want them to have the attitude of working and striving and struggling. They're going to struggle, and I know that as a coach, but I don't want them to feel like this is drudgery. I want them to feel like they're having fun, but at the same time, they're learning, and it is a struggle. It is a challenge. So that's
yeah. Well, I know our group game's going well when they're laughing, squealing, and screaming. You know, or they have the agony of defeat. Ah!
Right.
You know, when that stuff starts happening, then that's an indicator that the kids are having fun. They're really into it. You know, another thing too, in large group games, it can be really awesome to stop and have like 30 seconds of teaching. You know, a certain player misses a certain shot because of the execution, or you know, the placement of their shot was a little bit off. So you just stop for 30 seconds and go, now look, how could Paulina have won that point, or how could she have avoided losing it? You know, and then kind of open it up, and then, you know, get into like one little technical aspect or one little you know, tactical aspect of hit it here, not there. Then essentially in 30 seconds, you've taught your entire team one little aspect, and all of those cumulatively improve your team over time.
Yes. One thing I like to mention about that, because, and I did this in my younger years, where I would try to use a teaching moment in a group setting, in a group game, when someone did something. So one thing as a coach you want to avoid is actually correcting a player in front of the entire team. Okay? You don't want to point them out and go, oh man, you could have done this or whatever. But I like the way you just phrased it. Hey everybody, what do you think Pauline, how could we help Pauline in this shot? Or try to phrase it in a way where they don't feel like they're being picked on, but they feel like the whole team is coming to their rescue. I think that's a very important point that all coaches need to be mindful of when they're trying to make correcting. Now, yeah, I can hear some coaches say, come on, Styrling, you know, they're big boys and girls. Yes, I agree. At the same time, you don't always know what's going on in the head of that person. You know, maybe they had a tough day at school and they're just not, normally they're strong, and that particular day they're really sensitive, or maybe something happened in their life. So I think, you know, I've actually made comments and the player had a hard day and they took it pretty hard. And so I actually had to go back because I could feel, you know, them pulling away and sort of kind of withdrawing from me. So I had to come back in. So I think that's something.
And that brings up another thing. So let's back way up, because, you know, we get people who are going to watch this and they're going to be totally into the 4 C's and they're just loving it. And they're going to watch this a lot more than they're going to watch the coaching philosophy stuff, which is
right
100 times more important. And so, you know, hopefully I want to challenge anyone watching this that you look closely at the coaching philosophy stuff and develop your coaching philosophy really strong, and that there's a component of relationship building with your players. What's your strategy for developing a strong one-to-one relationship with each player on the team? And as a whole, what's your expectation for the group? One of mine is that my kids are going to be emotionally flexible and sort of tough, so that if we're playing a fun game and somebody does something ridiculous, I can call it ridiculous and nobody gets their feelings hurt. And if they do, then I'm going to take that player aside and go and check off with them and say, hey, you know, how are you? You know, I was just teasing. You know, is everything okay? You know, sorry if that came out wrong. I mean, because I'm not going to stop being me. I mean, I already, you know, I've been trying for 29 years to be zero sarcastic, and it just hasn't worked. So people, you know, so unfortunately, you know, my players are going to have to respond to me in some regard, but then I also have to check off with them.
There's no question about it. You want to maintain your personality. You want to maintain your passion. If anybody that's ever seen me work with a group of players, they know Styrling is going to be loud. I'm going to be passionate. I'm going to be into the game as much as you, even though I'm the one feeding the ball in. And I am so involved in the process because I want the game to move. I don't, especially if you're running, I've run 12 players on one court, and they were moving because, there was a lot of energy there. And as a coach, you've got to bring that energy in your own way. And maybe that energy is you're quiet and you let the players, maybe that's how you roll. Maybe you're sarcastic. Maybe you tell jokes, or you make outlandish comments like, that was so ridiculous,
Right.
So
let me get in there. I had a great talk with Sarah Stone, who I really respect a lot. I think she's a tremendous coach, and what she's doing with the Women's Tennis Coaches Association is amazing. So that's an incredible new initiative in the game, and much needed. And we were talking about sarcasm, and because I mean, so I think it's a mistake to just make a blanket statement that there must never be sarcasm. I think, though, that it is really important that your sarcasm not be a sincere sarcasm. Your sarcasm ought not to be mean-spirited. It ought not to be directed at something real. So I'll give you an example. We play, like I mentioned, we play this game Cupcake, where 3 people run across and you feed 3 straight balls. And it's pretty reasonable for each player to make each shot. 2 out of 3 players making their shot is probably most common. But when players miss all 3 shots, then that's when I drop my racket on the ground and I go like this for a moment, and pretty much everybody busts up, and everybody, it's a funny moment just about every time. And I just drop the racket like, is that how you want to play? But the funny thing is, it's motivating, because you need the carrot and the stick, and they need to know that level of concentration, or lack thereof, is unacceptable. That level of consistency is not going to get the match won. So,
absolutely, so going back to sort of bringing this back into the 4 C's, how you respond as a coach when players are being challenged is very important in the growth of that person as a human being. It's not just about making shots and missing shots and winning points and losing points. It's about helping that young adult develop to have some skin, to have some guts, like they can deal with the sarcasm, or they can deal with the passion, or they can deal with the quiet spirit, that you interject into a situation, or they can deal with being pulled aside and checked, hey, are you okay? So, I just encourage every coach, branch out, talk to other coaches out there. You're not an island unto yourself. That you'll find you've got more in common than you don't have in common. And I think the more we show grace to each other and to the players in front of us, the more we grow overall as coaches and players. So awesome. I think everybody's going to enjoy this blog this week.
Okay, good. So now, have we covered all the content that you wanted to cover?
That's it.
All right, let's do a little news and notes. Okay.
Okay.
So what's coming up for you? What do you got going that people should know about?
So it looks like I'm getting a lot of calls and a lot of direct messages from coaches about the book, and they're teaching their players how to win every time they play, which is, a play on words, no pun intended. But yeah, winning on the inside instead of winning on the outside of the scoreboard. I'm getting a lot of calls from guys that are doing the course, and I just keep encouraging you. If you've got the book and you've been doing some things, give me a call. If you don't understand anything or you want some more help, I'm free. Just direct message me. But I'm going to Virginia, looks like the end of the month, and I'm going to be helping out a D2 college coach out there. He coaches the women at the school. And I'm going to be working with that team with transforming their practice court, helping them into new ideas. What's that?
Who is that person?
Daniel Ragsdale.
Oh, that's what I was gonna guess, but yeah.
Yeah. So, and I'm gonna hang out with Daniel.
Man. Talk about a guy with a wicked sense of humor.
Daniel's amazing. So, in fact, I'm about to get on a call with him soon. But yeah, he's so we're going to talk about that, and maybe we're going to do some other things as well. So, yeah, so I'm getting calls. I'm starting to go out, and I'm also coaching online players. I'm sorry, coaches. I do a mentorship apprentice program where I actually have an hour Skype call with a coach every week, and I help them develop as a coach, develop their challenges or their drills on the practice court, things like that. So that's kind of what's going on in my world. What about you, Bill?
I'm heading to Atlanta on Friday. I'm going to be at Tennis Against Breast Cancer in Atlanta, and it's a huge event. And I think everybody knows Atlanta is like the #1 tennis city in America. If I don't know, maybe Los Angeles. I don't know, but anyway, Atlanta's pretty crazy. So then I'm going to be hanging out with Chuck Tomlin and John Carpenter and doing some guest coaching with them. So we've got some lessons lined up with some pretty talented players. And then on Saturday, I'm going to be with Brian Shepard in Trickham-Wilburn, Georgia. Wilburn at Mountain Park Tennis. So I'm going to do two-hour clinics with them, and it's going to be the visual tennis training. And then I am also available to do some virtual coaching. So if Styrling's schedule doesn't fit yours, then you can try me. So
well, for all those guys on the West Coast too, you guys are 3 hours behind. So
yeah, I'll be in Atlanta Friday through Sunday and coaching a lot, just trying to coach like a madman over there. And then the big road trip's coming up, the Southwest Swing. It's the Bill Patton Rock and Roll Tennis Barnstorming Tour of the Southwest. So so basically I'll leave out all the cities along the way, but basically I'm going from here to Houston, Texas, and hitting some places in Southern Cal, Arizona, maybe New Mexico, 4 different stops in Texas, Flagstaff, Arizona, and back home. So probably hit some Las Vegas there for a little bit and maybe do a little tourism. But yep, so I'm looking for, if people are in the Southwest and they want to have me over to do a special clinic or coach alongside, that's a lot of fun. And, well, I think one thing that's true about both Styrling and I and a lot of coaches like us is that we're not bullies. We don't come in and act like we're, the expert. We don't come in and try to make ourselves look good and you look bad. We want to make you look like a hero, so.
Well, hospitality goes a long way.
Yeah.
And, some of the very best coaches that I know that are out there, if I said their name, everyone would know who they are. I've been on court with them. They've come to visit me. I've chauffeured them around. But even when they're on the court with me, they always give way to what I'm doing. And they always are supportive of what I'm trying to accomplish. And it's incredible being around those. They didn't get to where they are by stepping on everybody's toes on the way up there. My grandmother always used to say, be careful who you step on the way up, because you might have to kiss their ass on the way down. So,
Well, my grandmother said, hey, turds always roll downhill.
So yeah, so I that's what I'm trying to be all about, and that's why I encourage all my friends to be all about is be hospitable, and it'll always come back. So this is a great talk. Thanks, Bill, for the Behind the Blog. October, is it the 9th?
I don't know. What day is it?
Man, it's the 9th. It's the 9th.
Okay, good.
So Behind the Blog will go out this week. Check it out on USATennisCoach. .wordpress.com. Yeah.
WordPress.com.
Yeah. We're trying to get I've had the domain name forever. I'm just trying to wait for something to expire, so it'll be USATennisCoach.com eventually. But right now, just type in Google USA Tennis Coach. It'll come up. Yeah. And just go to the blog. Check out some other blogs too. like Bill mentioned, the coaching philosophy, your methodology, so important to get that down. And it doesn't happen overnight. It takes time to go through and develop your philosophy and your methodology, and to figure out what you're all about as a coach, what you're trying to do with your players on court, and what your niche is. So I hope you enjoy the blog this week. Thanks, Bill, for the talk. It's always great to talk to you.
Okay, and thank you out there for watching. Take care.